Someone let the air out me tyres yet again. Can't trust anybody around here, can you, Mr. Kentucky Fudge? How are you, sir? He's doing well. And you guys out there, I hope you're all doing very well too. Someone knew I was coming. If you've got one of these, please raise it and enjoy. It's a lovely Halloween evening. It is now round about 6:30 and the wind hasn't picked up yet, although it is set to do so. And we're in the conservatory and, that lovely crisp smell is on the air. If I open that door there behind you guys, then the leaves will tumble in. Oh, it's beautiful. This time of year, we know it. All of us fiends. Speaking of fiends, I've brought a few friendly fiends. Now, you've seen videos on all these guys. I have discussed them at length and the movies that they have come from. And we have another mask to show you now from ToTS, Trick or Treat Studios, who have unleashed so many great things over the years. But this year in particular, they really seem to have absolutely knocked it out the park, because with all their Universal horror monsters and their Hammer horror monsters, it's just wonderful stuff. It's a great time to be a mask collector and a horror buff. Well, Halloween's always a great time to be a mask collector and horror buff, is it not? And they've just coincided it pretty well with all of this. So I have another mask to show you now, and I am going to champion this one because I know because people have told me that they're not fans of this particular makeup, and nor were they fans of the movie. And I think that is to their detriments, because I think from the mid-60s, 1965, Hammer's The Reptile is one of their great gothic features. Now, in the mid-60s, Hammer was going through a big cost-cutting exercise. And their idea was, they always were a kind of cottage industry, a family business, where the same cast and crew would move from one production to another. They would use predominantly Bray Studios and the different sound stages there, and obviously Blackwoods would feature for all the exteriors, and many, many movies would have this sort of thing. But their big new idea under Michael Carreras was to, let's do films back to back, so we can cut the cost. The exact same crew will move from one film to the next, and we'll have some cast members appearing in each movie as well, and then we're going to release them as double bills. So this period saw the likes of Dracula, Prince of Darkness, Rasputin the Mad Monk, and as far as I'm concerned, the best two, featuring one of my favourite films of all time, Plague of the Zombies and The Reptile. Now, the way it works out, Plague of the Zombies and The Reptile feature the same sets, some of the same cast, and you would have thought they'd release those two together. But back in those days, the thinking was that, as each film was released, audience would sit there and they're going to recognise certain bits. That cemetery in Plague of the Zombies is now going to be in The Reptile, and the same woman who is the zombie in that's going to be the reptile in. So what actually happened, even though Plague of the Zombies and The Reptile were filmed back to back, The Reptile was released with Rasputin the Mad Monk. And it was the supporting feature for that. And it's infinitely better. Rasputin's a fine movie. Christopher Lee playing Rasputin. And rah rah, Rasputin, lover of the Russian queen. And it is a good film. But it's not, strictly speaking, a horror movie. And it's not really what you expected from Hammer during this, halcyon period. But whereas Plague of the Zombies and The Reptile fit together, and of course now, because we have home video and we can do whatever the hell we want, to put the two together on a little double bill of your own, it pays so many dividends. It's so rewarding. But anyway, we're here to talk about The Reptile, and The Reptile was played by Jacqueline Pearce, the gorgeous Jacqueline Pearce, exotic, very dark, massive eyes, and so sultry, and got this really air of mystique about her. And obviously we'd seen it in Plague of the Zombies playing Alice, who is in a true nightmarish sequence, because it is a nightmare. she comes back from the grave, and it's one of the great zombie sequences in all of the zombie genre, even though in that they are not flesh-eating, Walking Dead. They are just slave minions. But we'll come on to that in due course. And she had to sit in a coffin, and she was very claustrophobic, and the makeup that Roy Ashton applied to it, she didn't enjoy the process at all. Jacqueline Pearce would go on to play Servalan in Blake 7, of course, and she went off to America and did lots of other things over there, and it's a great cult favourite. But then, straight after Plague of the Zombies, she would go on to the Reptile, where she'd have even more makeup applied to it, and it wasn't a great experience for her, and yet she does deliver a great performance in the movie. The movie, before we get onto the mask itself, centres around the Spauldings. Grenadier Guard with a leave of absence. Spaulding has lost his brother. His brother, in the opening sequence, has had the bite put on him by the Reptile and has gone frothing at the mouth and red-eyed, and he's died, basically. And they're calling it the Black Death in the local village because other people have succumbed to this strange malady as well. But the bodies just get buried and it's all kind of forgotten about. But Spaulding's brother, played by Ray Barrett, pockmarked and crater-faced from a terrible bout of acne, but actually, he's quite a striking looking fella. In fact, he looks like his fellow Antipodean, because he is Australian, Rod Taylor from The Time Machine. It's almost like Hammer were thinking, Rod Taylor's making a big name for himself, but we know someone who's a fraction of the cost, who looks a little bit like him in certain light. We'll have him! And Jennifer Daniel plays his wife, Mrs. Spaulding, and they arrive in this little town. And Michael Ripper, the great Michael Ripper, is Tom Bailey, the pub landlord. Everybody out there, I'm willing to bet you all know someone called Tom Bailey. Personally, I know 3 Tom Baileys. 2 of them live round here. There's a 4th one, and he was the lead singer of the band the Thompson Twins, but I don't really know him, so I guess that doesn't really count. And he's the good guy in the village. These are strangers in a strange town. And straight away, Tom Bailey, Mr. Spaulding, goes into the pub and he clears the pub out of all the regulars, all the locals, because he's a stranger. He just wants directions to the cottage that he's inherited from his deceased brother. And Tom Bailey said, well, thanks for clearing out my pub. I think you owe me a drink there. But the two of them become friends and confidants throughout this. It's funny that when they get to the actual cottage up the road, it's been turned over, everything's been wrecked. So Mr. Spaulding, Grenadier Guard that he is, storms back into the pub, confronts the same group, says, look, I know I'm a stranger here and you might feel hostilities towards me, but I need to know which one of you did it. And like 2 or 1, they'll say, well, I didn't do it. I know nothing about that, mister. I didn't turn over no cottage. And they all get up and fuck off again. So poor old Tom Bailey, Michael Ripper, with a lovely little goatee beard he's got going on, and which is just stuck on, it's not real. And he just goes, that's the second time you've cleared me out, Mr. Spaulding. You owe me another drink. But something is definitely happening in this little enclave. There is the big house, the baronial house, which is just up the road from the cottage, and there resides Dr. Franklin, played by Noel Willman, and he is a doctor of theology. He and his daughter, we don't hear about the wife, the mother, he and his daughter Anna, played by Jacqueline Pearce, have been out far east, and he's a doctor of theology, he's been investigating strange beliefs and cults around Borneo and Malaysia and other mystical Far Eastern places, and he's stuck his big aristocratic beak where it don't belong. And as a consequence, a snake cult which he uncovered have kidnapped his daughter, and then once she was released back to him, she's been cursed to be a snake lady, a reptile. And there she is. That's the makeup. That is the mask from Trick or Treat Studios, which has been sculpted by Chris Williams. I'm sorry, part of your brain fell out there. The bagging I've got inside there. Now, and this poor girl, rather like the werewolf, is a an unwitting monster. She doesn't want to be like this. And when she's in human form, she's exceptionally gorgeous and beautiful, and she tries to befriend Mrs. Spaulding and Mr. Spaulding, and she just wants to be, a nice neighbour. But her father knows what the curse is, and he is stricken with grief and remorse, and it's turned him into one of the most despicable characters in Hammer movies. Even though he's not really, strictly speaking, a villain, he does act horrible to everybody. And it's because he had to put up with this. And not only does he have to put up with his daughter periodically turning into a reptile and even shedding her skin disgustingly and putting the bite on people because she can't control herself, that there's also a watchman over them to make sure that the curse is even more excruciating. To all outward appearances, he has a butler, a Malay servant played by Marn Maitland, and who is Malaysian, and he's just known as the Malay in the credits. He doesn't actually have a name, but he's not actually just the butler. He's overseeing this and what happens, and he's continually cruelly persecuting Dr. Franklin for his intervening and sticking his nose in their affairs. You kind of wonder what he's going to get out of it, because he's had to leave his own country and go with this family to their, rather cold place in England. And, what fun is he getting from that? Surely he'd have more fun with the snake cult rituals back home. But anyway, he's there, and he's the real villain of the piece. But she will unwittingly, when she transforms, put the bite on various people, one of whom is Mad Peter. Now, Mad Peter is played by John Laurie. John Laurie was Private Fraser in Dad's Army, the Mad Jock. We're all doomed, rubbish. And he gives a wonderful performance in this. They call me Mad Peter. I'm not really mad, I'm just a little bit vague. Some things, some modern ideas, I don't quite understand them. How to make money, for one thing. But he knows what's out there, and he will hear the kind of snake charming chanting that takes place across the moorland, and he will go crazy because he can hear it, and he will end up being a victim again, frothing at the mouth, his skin turning black, his eyes growing very livid. It's a very lurid depiction of venomous, toxins afflicting the human body. But if you've ever seen a snake bite, what it does to flesh, do you know what? Roy Ashton wasn't too far off the mark. In fact, if anything, he toned it down. A real toxic venom from a snake is truly, absolutely ungodly to behold. Forget all that, sucking the poison out and spitting it away. Hack the limb off is probably your best antidote. Ooh. Now, Roy Ashton, who was the makeup guy for Hammer throughout most of their best pictures, their best creature features, and he devised the makeup here for Oliver Reed for Curse of the Werewolf. Now, as I said to you in that video about that mask and that film, he went out and studied wolves in the zoo. He photographed them, he filmed them, he did pictures of them to try and capture the look of a real life wolf. As we've discussed before, the makeup is splendid, but it looks nothing like a real life wolf. Likewise for this, he went and studied snakes. He took a plaster cast of a snake's skull. He discovered that the snake's skeletal structure of the skull is very similar to a human's, apparently. So when it came to constructing this for Jacqueline Pearce, he used laminated paper and created a mask which went from the base of the neck all the way across the top and down to the nose here. And on that was ingrained a hairline. The wig would be attached, obviously. He took the cast of genuine snake scales, snake skin, and then obviously applied it to the makeup, to the laminated paper. And it was a top mask. So it came to the nose here, and went over the back of the head down to the base of the skull. So here, all around the chin, all around here, was just makeup, just green makeup. In the film, you can in some shots, see it. The fangs had glycerin applied to them, which was meant to be the venom the toxic venom that she produces. Now, this mask, folks, is absolutely spot on as to what you see in the movie. The bulbous eyes, which people kind of go, that looks stupid, that. I don't think so. I don't think so. That, to me, is the snake. Initial ideas for the movie was going to be called The Reptiles, because there wasn't going to be just one, there was going to be a family of these things. But obviously, budgets, cost cutting, went down to one. And you can see this lovely swept back hair. Now, in the film, the hair is much longer, and it does drape sinuously down her back, so it swishes snake-like as she moves. And when she's a snake, a bit like, where is he? Lon Chaney Jr. playing Larry Talbot as the Wolfman. The Wolfman always gets changed. I always go into this. He always gets changed. And whatever he's wearing when he was human, he gets changed into that costume. Because he can't go out on the prowl without wearing his 1930s workman's shirt. Well, likewise with the Reptile. She seems to, no matter what she was wearing beforehand when you've seen it, as a normal, beautiful human girl, when she's the Reptile, she puts on this black water patterned sari, which is gorgeously slinky and sexy. And some people go like, that's a rubbish costume. That's meant to be No, it's not. She's not meant to be. That's her skin. It's a dress that she's wearing. It's not meant to be anything other. She is putting on a dress, but it's why she's putting on that dress to go and do it. Her killings, who knows? And the hair on ToTS mask is, well, it's beautifully swept back, as you can see there. That works. What doesn't work so well is that it's that frizzy kind of hair, that very synthetic hair. So it kind of, almost like an afro, held back in a bun, it kind of bushes out. So what I would suggest, and I haven't done it myself as yet, is if you want it to look a bit more authentic, you're going to have to gel or mousse or put maybe coconut oil or something to smooth this down and straighten it out and get it a lot thinner and tighter in. And you can do that and it will look great, because actually that length's not too bad. That is not too bad there. And the hair coverage is fantastic. And it does sweep back beautifully, as you can see. The hairline is accurate. The snake scales, this patterning is very accurate. The fangs are accurate. The blackness inside here and the colour of the gums, that's accurate. It's all very spot on. Now, the big bulbous eyes, yeah. Now, I already know, and I'm preempting some people there who are going to say to me, no, what's this pale colour around here? This kind of pale blue, this kind of washed out turquoise look around there. It's pink in the movie. No, it isn't. It is this sort of colour. But what you're seeing there is you only see this a couple of times, really. In some shots, very definitely, all this does look pink. A kind of spongy, battered, almost burnt sort of pink colour. And why is that? Well, Arthur Grant, who did the photography and the lighting for the movies and did a lot of Hammer movies, was a specialist in gels and lighting. So he would apply gels to his lenses and to the lights to give a whole different aspect, a whole new different aesthetic to the scene. And it works splendidly. This is why the Hammer movies at this period are so handsome and gorgeous to look at. They're so vivid. It's because of all of this. Obviously the ornate production design and the art design, everything is so stately and elegant and gorgeous and vibrant. But the photography is a league of its own, and it's because of these gels. Now in certain shots, when she just lunges out the shadows and puts the on somebody, yeah, you will get, it looks kind of this burnt pink, livid, maybe even orange in some shots. But the actual colour, when you do see it properly, is that. Now on my mask, this one here, there is one slight little discrepancy there. Can you see the little black dot there where obviously the paint's either come away or something else has managed to manifest itself there. And I haven't been able to find any kind of paint that would cover that. You know, I don't know. And I'm not that worried. You know, look, end of the day, it's a mask. And for the price that you're paying for these things, which I think in this case was 59 English pounds. 59 English pounds. And you get an absolutely cracking, fantastic and unusual mask. As I said before, the Reptile, although real movie buffs who love Hammer movies do rate the Reptile, and I do. I think it's very suspenseful and exciting, and it's an unusual story. It has so many great characters and so many great sequences in it. The sequence where the Spauldings go to Dr. Franklin's because they've been invited for dinner. Well, Anna in human form has invited them there. But Dr. Franklin doesn't like that, you know. But he will be polite, but sort of, sinister at the same time. He'll encourage his daughter to play some, Far Eastern music, and she gets a sitar out, which was a very unusual instrument to be seen in British cinema at that time. And she starts playing, and in a very highly erotically charged sequence, she plays this wonderful. Well, she's not obviously Jacqueline Pierce isn't playing it, but it's this wonderful piece of music, and it gets stronger and stronger and more potent. And her father is sitting there getting kind of agitated, and she starts making eyes at him, and it's a very subversive sequence. You're like, what's going on there? Hammer's film doesn't go any further into that side of things, this relationship between them, the father and the daughter, quite wisely as well. But it's got this kind of frisson to it, which is very unnerving, but very exciting at the same time. Dr. Franklin, even though he has a walking stick, he just gets up and he's like, no, stop playing that, takes the sitar and smashes it in front of his guests, who are kind of a bit perturbed, shall we say. I mean, they've just moved in and they've had the house turned over, there's people dying left, right and centre, and he's trying to unearth what happened to his brother. When I say unearth, him and Tom Bailey, Michael Ripper, do actually go and unearth the coffin of his brother in that very same cemetery set that you saw Jacqueline Pierce rise from the grave in Plague of the Zombies. And the film, without a doubt, is directed by Jack Gilling, who, beyond Terence Fisher, was the next best Hammer director, in my opinion. And what Hammer's thing always seemed to be was that they're a working class unit, and they always stuck the finger, they flipped the bird at the establishment and aristocracy, the upper classes, and especially in the likes of Plague of the Zombies and the Reptile. Plague of the Zombies has Squire Hamilton using, again, he's stuck his nose into Far Eastern or exotic cults and magic, and he's brought Haitian voodoo back. So not Far Eastern, but West Indian, and brought that back to the UK shores, and he's killing people off and bringing their bodies back as slaves to work in his mines. Bastard, complete Tory. And again, Dr. Franklin is paying the price for being a colonialist who's gone out there and stuck his beak in where it don't belong, and brought back and exposed beliefs which were meant to be secretive. So now he's paying the price. But who's paying the price really? It's the innocent people who are being killed because of what he's done. Again, Hammer is sticking the boot in at the upper classes. They've always done that. And I champion that too. I've got some upper class friends too. They're okay. So long as they keep me in whiskey. So folks, the film ends with a typical fiery climax. The house is ablaze. She resides down, when she's in this form, but underground in a sulphur pit because the heat. And when Dr. Franklin has a final battle with Marn Maitland, who is the Malay servant, and he ends up throwing him. Well, the two stuntmen who are kind of, they're obviously stuntmen, but the scene still works. Even though he's got a walking stick, he manages to fight the good fight for his daughter's sake, and he heaves the Malay into the sulphur pit. Bernie Burns, and he sinks down. But Mrs. Spaulding has come in to try and rescue Anna and sees the fight. So even though he's got a walking stick, he chases after her, and this is the thing about him. He's not meant to be the villain, and yet he threatens and frightens and locks her in while the whole house is beginning to go up in flames. And you're like, what are you doing? And then he delivers a massive piece of exposition describing exactly what happened, why Anna is like the way she is, about her kidnapping and being, coerced into this cult and now carrying the curse. And but then Anna comes up and puts the bite on her father, and she puts a real severe bite on him, so he dies pretty much straight away, whereas other victims, including Mr. Spaulding, who's gone up to rescue her previously, and unwittingly she's come out the shadows, leaned in and put the bite on him, but he manages to get home with a huge, horrible, lumpy, horrible, decomposing black lumpen mass on his neck, and he says to his wife, played by the delectable Jennifer Daniel, cut me, that's your neck, mate. She gets a knife and stabs in, and nowadays you get a big huge splat of all the stuff coming out, but they very tactfully, avoid that. But I think it's clever that even though, Ray Barrett's meant to be the hero, he ends up being completely useless. He gets the bite put on him, and he's incapacitated for a chunk of the final third of the movie. So it's Tom Bailey, Michael Ripper, and Jennifer Daniel, and the finally resuscitated, Ray Barrett comes to the rescue, and either the house is going up in flames, and the reptile is cornering, Jennifer Daniel in the parlour, having killed her own father. They break the glass, and because the cold air comes in, it's kind of silly, but it's a very touching, emotional moment. You hear Jacqueline Pearce's voice saying, as the breeze comes through the broken glass, it's cold, and she will wither and she'll die. It's a bit on the nose, because the whole house is ablaze, so there might be a draft behind you, but it's fucking an inferno right there. Just head that way. But the reptile, despite an enormous amount of comings and goings from cottages and pubs and to the big house, and some of Hammer's worst day for night shooting, you've got lots of scenes of people moving about in what's supposed to be night, but it's clearly shot at midday, and you've got these acres of shadows, and it's just, oh. But then again, if you're looking for that and you're picking fault with it, then you're not enjoying the movie. Just accept that for what it is, and part of the charm of that cycle of Hammer movies and that quick cutting, production run that they were doing. And even with little discrepancies like that, they were delivering bloody good product time and time again, And I genuinely love the Reptile. It's atmospheric, it's ghoulish, it's an unusual story. It's kind of a subverted werewolf kind of story, but with massive overlays of the exotic thrown in. An unusual monster, again sympathetic and yet horrifying. It's a bit like the Gorgon Medusa, only seen in the shadows, but a female creature, which is again an unwitting beast. Chris Williams' mask is tremendous, folks. I genuinely love it. I keep waggling it round. The paintwork is tremendous. That green is terrific. The detailing here is totally fine. The eyes are vivid and really out there. Yes, they're googly, I know, but it still looks fabulous and very accurate as far as I'm concerned. So for me, The Reptile, the film, massive thumbs up. The Mask, massive thumbs up. ToTS, another winner, an unusual one, which I'm going to give it the big thumbs up. Folks, I have been and always shall be Kilt-Man. So, in the meantime and in between time,